Hey, let's switch gears here and get over to some Niners talk with Greg Cosell, who had some things to say about Brock Purdy. And, the Brock Purdy whisperer, if you will. I haven't been on with you, Larry, since you made the call about Brock. So I'm going to give you your flowers.
Thank you.
You had it.
I've had plenty of flowers coming my way.
And you deserve it. You deserve it. Okay, let's get to that Greg Cosell sound about Brock Purdy and where he's at with him.
One of the great things about Purdy was that he did not make what you'd call bad throws. Could he have thrown a few more picks? Obviously, Diggs dropped the interception at the end of the first half in that game against Seattle, which was only he could tell you why he threw that. I couldn't, because he threw it right to Diggs. But he also started to miss a few things the last 2 weeks where they were designed to fine read throws, and for whatever reason, he didn't turn it loose. He just, I don't know, maybe he didn't see. I can't answer that. Only he could. I'm not saying that he did not have a good year, and the story is phenomenal, but 6-7 games is not enough to decide that a guy is either bad, in some cases, or great.
Niners Talk Podcast. That's what that was on from Greg Cosell on NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt Mayoko and Jennifer Lee Chan. Initial thoughts there, Larry.
First of all, I love Greg. Greg and I are friends, been friends for a long time. I just, it's easy to it's easy to say, right? It's easy to say, well, we need to see more. Mm-hmm. Okay, how much more? How much more do you need to see? How much more? What do you need to see? Because I don't know. I mean, the guy played 4 years in college, and if you watch his college film, it's kind of the same thing. He rolls out and buys extra time. He's quick. He's pretty damn accurate. I mean, the guy completed 70% of his passes, I think, his final year there. He played 445 NFL snaps this year. Brock did. 6-0 as a starter in the regular season. Right, 2-0 in the playoffs. Really, could have been more like 7-0 in the regular season, because that Miami game they were losing
pretty early.
Was early. So I'm going to give him 7-0 as a starter, then 2-0 in the playoffs, and then he gets knocked out. So as far as I'm concerned, the guy's 9-0. Mm-hmm. He really hasn't been beaten. He just got knocked out, and it was a freakish kind of thing. And he completed 66% of his passes, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks. This guy took care of the football. Lance, by comparison, 262 snaps career, 2-2 record. He's completed 54% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, a passer rating of 84.5. So you got one guy with an 111 passer rating, the other guy with an 84.5. I mean, they're both too small a sample sizes. Mm-hmm. Why do we say that? Because Colin Kaepernick, 5 or 6 games in, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Right. It takes time to kind of flesh these things out. If you have a weakness to your game, it takes time for it to kind of circulate around the league, and then defensive coordinators are throwing you nothing but what you struggle with. Mm-hmm. But I don't see anything with Brock Purdy that makes me say, you know what? That's what he can't do. He doesn't have an overwhelming arm, but he's got enough of an arm. He's not the biggest guy, but he's big enough. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but in my mind, unless he loses arm strength because of the injury, and that's a big question, his arm is strong enough. What I see is a guy who sees it. He can do the play-action game. He can do the bootleg game. Shanahan trusted him. Shanahan even referenced that he called a game that he wants to call with Brock. And he didn't say as much, but he suggested, he kind of implied that he didn't get to call the game that he wants with Trey or Jimmy or with any other quarterback. And then the other thing is, at the end of the year, I was starting to hear, well, anybody can win in this Shanahan offense. Really? Really? We're going there? 9-29. That was the record for non-Garoppolo quarterbacks under Shanahan since he's been in San Francisco. So that whole narrative that anybody can win is just totally false. So I don't know. I agree with it's easy to say, well, we need more time. Yeah, we need more time. But what we've seen looks pretty damn good.
I guess the question is, in terms of the whole need more time, and it all is based on, number one, how long it's going to take for Brock to come back, what that whole thing looks like. And number two, in terms of Trey Lance and what he's doing and how he looks, has Brock done enough to, if he is a bit delayed? And to me personally, you might as well just highball it. I don't think I'm not saying that he won't be back in 6 months, because I have no clue. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I'm not getting in there, but I just think it's a safer bet to, just from the things that I've heard and just about going in there and how you have to come back from it. I would prefer to just highball it at 9 months and be surprised. So if it is 9 months and let's say Trey does look good, then the question becomes, has Brock done enough, whether you're Greg Cosell or Larry Krueger, has Brock done enough to just automatically get inserted back in if Trey had been looking good? I think that's where this thing gets dicey. If Brock is back 6 months and he's back for training camp and all that stuff, then I think this is a moot point. It's going to be Brock Purdy. But if it's a little bit later and Trey does get some run, and let's say Trey just looks good, right? Has Brock done enough to just get, hey, Brock's back, as you would if he was just QB1? He's QB1.
I would say
you don't have to duke it out.
I would say the players in the room are going to want to see Brock based on what happened this year. But that's based on what happened this year.
This year.
What if next year Trey Lance shows up in training camp and is just worlds better? And what if all of a sudden he's got a total grasp of everything and they're playing at a really high level? Then I think it's a to be determined situation. I don't think anything's etched in stone. But if you asked me, what percentage of the locker room would be pro Purdy, I would say the majority of the guys believe that he should be the starting quarterback going into next year. But it's all going to be, what have you done for me lately? And it's all about what does he look like coming out of this thing? What if he loses, some zip on the fastball? He gained greater velocity on his throws going into the draft, working in Arizona, with some guys on his mechanics. If he regresses and he's not throwing with the same velocity, maybe he can't make every NFL throw.
Well, that's the question, because his starting point is not a cannon, right? So if you didn't have a cannon and now you lose something off your fastball, if your fastball was only high 80s, right, and now you come back and now you're throwing mid 80s, who knows if that's enough to get it done? We don't know. And the whole thing about
makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference.
You play baseball. If a guy's bringing 95 and then all of a sudden he's back out there and he looks the same, but he's throwing 92,
it's completely different.
It's different.
It's completely different. And the take about, not even the take, but how the idea of the team saying, or being quote unquote pro Brock, to me, that's not even as hot of a take as people want to make it seem, because why wouldn't you? What are your options? Your options aren't great. It's Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, who you've seen less of, and you were not as successful for a bevy of different reasons, but you were less successful. So I don't understand why anybody would take the Brock Purdy. I think Brock is the guy right now. Well, of course he is. He was the guy last time they won a game on a football field that mattered. So, and they were on a great run. So I don't take that as a slight on Trey Lance. I take that as a fact of the NFL and a business and wanting to win football games. That's just what you have.
You also got to remember, Trey, what has Trey really done? He's had the game against Arizona that was on Shanahan. Terrible game plan. He had the game against Houston. Bad first half. Terrific second half. I thought he was great in the second half against Houston. Then what do you have this year? He had Chicago. He made a couple plays in the Chicago game, but they didn't put up big-time points. And then the monsoon hit. And then he gets basically, a season ended early in the next game.
Right.
So we don't really know.
We don't know.
And also we've never seen Trey with McCaffrey. I'd love to see what Trey would look like with a Pro Bowl dump-off back like Christian McCaffrey. I'm sure it's going to help him. So there's no doubt. Purdy's played at a higher level, and it's not shocking. He played a ton in college in a big-time Power 5 conference. Trey's coming out of the FCS. He barely played. The pandemic, all the off time, the complexity of the Shanahan offense, all these things factor in. I think, though, when you've played as little football as Trey Lance has played, you improve at a faster rate. So I expect him to hit the field this summer and look quite a bit better than what he did last year.
Yeah, and I think obviously the Niners would hope for it. 888-957-9570. Let's get out to the call line. David in Brentwood wants to talk about what the Niners will do if Brock or Lance don't work out. What's up, David? You're on the roast with Alan and Larry.
Hey, good morning, guys. Happy President's Day. Larry, enjoy always your takes, even when you were on the prior station, which we will not mention. But I do appreciate the fact that you show a lot of knowledge from the game.
Thank you, man.
With
Appreciate
regards
you.
to this thing going on with quarterbacks, if Brock Purdy is healthy, he's got to be the one, okay? Because the guy has two things that I haven't seen from even from Jimmy. He has the ability to actually visualize the whole field, okay? All the options that he has, even when he has pass rushers, coming towards him, he is accurate. Anything else, it is what it is. The guy is kind of short. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm, but like I said, he's a winner. Trey Lance, he hasn't shown enough. It's hard to tell. But if they're going to get stuck on the fact that he is a high pick, I mean, we wasted two first-round picks when we got Solomon Thomas, and I forgot what was the name of the other linebacker they got.
Reuben Foster, yeah.
Exactly, during the same draft. I think right now the bigger question is, do they have a plan B if Brock Purdy takes a lot longer to heal and Trey is not working out? Because let's say Trey starts for the first 4 games and the guy struggles really, really bad, and it's a lot longer for Brock Purdy to come back. What are they going to do? Stick with Trey, just keep losing games for the heck of it? They better have a plan, because this past offseason during the playoffs, this game against Philly, that showed me they were not prepared. I mean, the fact that they decided to go with Josh Johnson as a backup, that was a terrible plan. I mean, they basically prepared to lose. That's what they did. Because you have to keep in mind that they were going to come, hot and heavy against Brock Purdy, and there was a chance that he could get hurt. If they are going to go back and say, well, we asked Jimmy and he didn't want to come in, you can't blame Jimmy. I mean, for all we know, and from what we've seen, Jimmy got screwed big time by the 49ers, okay? And this thing about them talking about Jimmy is something that goes back to the first time. I mean, the first time when they decided that they were going to train him, rumors came out that the guy didn't study, the guy, he would get lost and didn't answer the phone. It's like, why would they talk back about, why would they say bad things about the guy? And now the second time, rumors again,
Yeah, thanks, David. Had to get you going there, but I think we got the idea. The only thing I would push back on is I do agree. I think that was a way of saying they need to bring in a third quarterback, and I think that they will. And we've gone through and looked at the Taylor Heineke's. They got to bring in, I would say, a vet that they can get on a decent deal just in case. Now, the idea of preparing.
Who do you want? You want Andy Dalton?
I would take Andy Dalton.
Taylor Heineke.
I would take Taylor Heineke.
It's not an impressive list.
It's not an impressive list.
Nate Sudfeld.
You don't want to pay them impressive money, though. Anyway.
Jarrett Stidham. Easton Stick played with Trey at North Dakota State. I actually would be open-minded to just try to go into the draft and do it. I think there's some great day 3 picks in the draft. I mean, I like the kid from Tanner. I like the kid from Stanford, Tanner McKee. Mm-hmm. I like Jake Haener from Fresno State, Clayton Tune from Houston. I mean, there's guys that you can get in the draft that are not going to be day 1 or day 2 picks, and maybe that's the route, because at least then you go rookie. You've got the NFL's cheapest quarterback room. Mm-hmm. And then you can go spend your money on your D-line and your secondary and Bosa and Ayuk and extending guys. That might be the way to go. I mean, a veteran would be nice, but you know what? If you're going to have to coach up Brock, if you're going to have to coach up Trey, you like Greasy, you feel good about your offensive staff, Clint Kubiak there. Maybe you go young. I mean, I've heard people compare Jake Haener, who's the MVP of the Senior Bowl, to Brock Purdy.
Yeah. And that's going to be the thing now. Everybody's going to start looking for the next Brock. Yeah. Brock Purdy has now remade every QB pick important. Right. Now we're going to be paying attention to every
Mr.
QB
Irrelevant.
Pick, right.
Yeah.
Who's going to be second? The only thing I would push back on David on is the idea of Trey playing just means you're going to lose games. I just don't think, again, we've seen enough to sit there and say, now if it's an injury thing, then yeah, I get it. You need a third QB. But this idea of, if Brock's not ready, are we just going to have Trey in and just lose games while we wait for Brock? I don't think we've seen enough from Trey to just assume you're just going to catch L's.
I agree. But also, you got to remember this. The 49ers standard at this point is to win the Super Bowl.
I agree.
Right? And if you're going to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, all the great, quarterbacks. You're going to have to score 30 a game. When the Niners got boat raced by Kansas City earlier this year at Levi's, Kansas City hung 40 on them, and they couldn't they were not in the same stratosphere. In the second half of the year, the Niner offense started to score 30, 35 a game under Brock Purdy. To me, if you look at it and say, what's it going to take to win the Super Bowl? Improve your defense and keep scoring 35 a game. If you score 35 a game, you got a chance to beat Mahomes. You got a chance to beat Kansas City. If you can't score 35 a game, you're going to have a hard time.